But Jim, does that affect the work in your lab?
Well, I think Harriet pretty well described that. I think that's what we all deal with. We all understand the process. It's an in-depth, lengthy process. There's no reason to rush to judgment, and that happens, I think, in some instances, particularly during a crisis. That's understandable. But the bottom line is the scientific process usually works. It's a very effective process. It's a very tedious, at times, a very laborious process. It's a lengthy process. But in the long run, I think that's the best way to arrive at the proper conclusions, and the way we should all, it would help us all to better understand what really has happened, what really is happening, and the fact is we're going to have to continue doing that for some time to come, because this is, I believe, a rather long-term process, and we need all the answers we can possibly get. We all want to know what really happens.
Yeah. Well, do y'all have any frustrations about the unasked questions, or the questions that your labs can't get to at this point?
It's a very frustrating process and we've touched on it before, when dealing with funding, because we have to continue to do those things that we are being funded to do, yet here is this opportunity and to work in additional areas, and yet the funding has not really reached those academic circles and research circles that it needs that they need.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's right. One of my colleagues the other day made an interesting statement, said there's so much that we need to do, so much that we have to do, but you know, there are only 20 working hours in a day. So, but yes, we have many things, underway at this time. Of course, we're very interested in all of those, and we're doing the very best we can to answer these questions. And, you know, we've been residents of the coast for 40, 50 years. We know a lot of people there. They know us. We know the community. We're constantly asked what's going on, what are you learning, what's the real story. You know, we want to know those answers as well, because we're part of that community as well. And so we and the Gulf Coast Research Laboratory faculty and staff, you know, we're doing the very best job we can to get at these questions and to deliver answers as quickly as we can. But it does take a lot of time, and it takes funding, much of which we don't have at this time.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the frustrations. I think GCRL is and its adjunct faculty, if you will, at the universities around the state are renowned in the United States for their knowledge of the Gulf of Mexico. Y'all were the first scientists to make comments when this was over. You were, because of your baseline data and all the research that y'all were actively doing. So yes. I think you're to be commended for that. Has there been any pressure put on you from government agencies to move into research areas where y'all have not been before? Do you expect that to happen? Not pressure. No, no. Well, we'd like to move into research areas that we see need to be addressed that we haven't been able to because of maybe the lack of the sort of funding we'd like to have. That's pressure of one sort, I guess, knowing that the things that need to be done, and you just can't get to them right now because of the inability to do that. Right. Well, I think that's sort of what I was talking about, what people call the unfunded mandates, where people start to expect the scientific community to answer questions for which there's no funding, nor there's been enough time to gather the information. And I think that's something that you all deal with probably on a daily basis with your research.
It is. It's part of the way we do things, but now it's very critical. This is a crucial time, and we need a lot of answers to a lot of questions. And you know, we're poised, and I think our laboratory is very well positioned to address many of these issues, and we're prepared to do so.
Good. Well, what questions are y'all asking now that you think have the largest national impact, the largest northern Gulf of Mexico impact, and maybe the largest Mississippi impact? The questions that you're pursuing, how's that going to affect the audience?
I think one of the things that everyone wants to know is how will the dispersant and Corexit affect the organisms that we're working on, and actually the ecosystems themselves. And no one has ever, I mean, this is a new event to us, and it's very difficult for our laboratory in terms of the chemical analysis. It takes a lot of expensive instrumentation, so we're having to depend on our colleagues essentially to help us with all of those analytical tasks. And again, we keep coming back to funding.
Sure.
That's been a crucial issue with us.
Right. Are y'all collaborating with the other labs around the Gulf Coast? Each state has at least one lab that's similar to yours in structure.
Yes, and we probably need to ramp that up a bit as well, but I know Harriet, particularly in some of her work, is doing that. She's probably sort of leading the way at this point in those collaborations, I believe, with her specific work with crabs.
Well, I know that I've spoken to a number of scientists at those other labs, and they always speak highly. Plus, they're all sort of interconnected by summer internships and graduate school and collegiality and research and that sort of thing. The issue on blue crabs, one of the frequently asked questions now is, did we learn anything from the Ixtoc oil spill in 1979 about blue crabs? Is there, I know the blue crab fishery is not as big in that part of the world as it is here, but were there any lessons learned that can be applied here?
I am not aware of any particular studies on blue crabs from Ixtoc. But I think we will learn a great deal from this spill. There's been a lot of targeted research on blue crabs, so I think we're going to come up with some answers.
Right. Well, certainly all along the coast, all of these commercial fisheries issues are just huge. They loom huge because of the economic webs that they represent.
Webs.
That not only food webs, economic webs, and then cultural webs about how everything's interconnected. And certainly that's playing out now with that seafood all over the country. And of course, people are very concerned about what the public relations side of that factor is. People are going to look to the scientific community to answer questions about safety and about the future of these fisheries, and they're important to Americans.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Fisheries in the Northern Gulf are very interconnected. What happens in Louisiana is important to what happens in Mississippi.
Right.
Louisiana drives our fisheries both biologically and economically.
Yeah. Are there connections between the lab and the Extension Service, the State Extension Service?
Yes, our lab works very closely with an organization called the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission, in which scientists and managers and politicians from each Gulf state meet twice a year and discuss issues. And our next meeting will be in October, and I think it's going to be a very interesting meeting to talk with our colleagues in other states.
Well, good. Well, we have a few minutes left. Why don't we take a couple of minutes each, if y'all would sort of go back and hit the high points of what we just talked about and anything that you felt was left unsaid.
Again, I think as a fisheries biologist, of course, and having many years of experience on the coast, I've learned a few things over the years, and I think, of course, we're just extremely concerned about the future of our fisheries. We're hoping for the very best, but it's going to take some time, I think, for that really to play out, for us to understand what impacts occurred, the nature of those impacts, what the future of those impacts mean to fisheries on the coast, both commercial and recreational. And again, we'll be monitoring at a fairly high level on a variety of fronts to get at some of those answers and to try to better understand how things are working, how we proceed with our research in the future, and how we communicate to the public our findings and our continue to develop a good relationship and rapport with our citizenry along the Gulf Coast, because that's a very important part of this entire event.
Good. Harriet?
And I agree with Jim. I think Mississippi and actually all of the northern Gulf states are so fortunate in having a historical database that will allow us to really assess changes that we see. I mean, the database extends over a wide range of environmental conditions and climatic conditions. So we are really poised to be able to make those assessments. And assessment monitoring is a long, tedious, boring kind of science, but when you need it, it's critical. and we have one of the best databases, I'd say, in the States.
Well, I agree with that, and I know that the media is just waiting on pins and needles to get information out of y'all's lab, and the kind of information that you're researching, because it's so vitally important to the well-being of people along the Gulf Coast, yes, as well as our economy. So, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate your work, and good luck in what you have ahead of you. Erin?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. And of course, we know that you have a lot of answers. So we want to let you know that you can find out more on our companion website at spillscience.com. It's called spillscience.com. There you can find in-depth information about topics related to the spill, as well as video discussions from scientists studying the effects of the spill in the Gulf of Mexico. You may also want to join the discussion on our blog section of the site, where you can engage in discussions with scientists studying the impacts of the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Again, that site, spillscience.com. And that's all for this edition of The Science of the Spill. Until next time, I'm Erin Pickens.
And I'm Bob Thomas.
This program was made possible by a grant from the National Science Foundation, a co-production by Mississippi Public Broadcasting and the University of Southern Mississippi Gulf Coast Research Laboratory.